everyone, it's Shar and welcome back to my channel. I am so excited because today I'm doing a video that I never thought I would do, and that is a TBR. Now, if you're new here, your girl is a mood reader, so much so that when I tell myself that I have to read a book or have a set TBR, it's pretty much a guarantee that I will read anything but what is on that TBR. But a few of these books are for videos, and in the month of October, it is my favorite month. It is my birthday month. My birthday was on Sunday that just passed, and I will have quite a bit more free time this month than I have had in previous months. So on my TBR for the month of October, I have about 15 books, and I'm gonna go in order of genre, starting with the horror/thriller books. One of the first books I wanna read this month is Gallows Hill, which is the newest book by Darcy Coates. Gallows Hill is a winery that is owned by the Hull family, and the Hull family are mom and dad and a little girl who own this winery on this land that the locals say is cursed because it is the location of mass execution of a bunch of prisoners. So we fast forward, and one night the Hull parents, Mr. and Mrs. Hull, die. They mysteriously die, leaving their daughter Margot behind. 20 years in the future, Margot has moved back to the Hull family winery on Gallows Hill, and she is starting to believe that she may be the next victim of the curse, and perhaps the town locals are onto something. I have read so many of Darcy Coates' books. I've never given a Darcy Coates less than 3 stars. One of the only authors that I read all of her new releases, so I am super excited to give this one a go and see if I love it just as much as I think it will, because y'all, a haunted house on a hill sounds right up my street. The second book that I'm going to be reading in the thriller horror genre, I think this is more horror than thriller, is The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. Now, this is where the sticker couldn't come off because we love that. But anyway, I read one other Stephen Graham Jones previously, and that was Night of the Mannequins. I really did not like that book, but I have super high hopes for this book. It is about 2 people who go hunting on land that they really should not be hunting on. They kill an elk, and then some weird shit and scary shit starts happening as a consequence of their actions. So I am super excited to read this and give this a go, because I'm hoping I'm going to enjoy it more than I did Night of the Mannequins. Plus the audiobook is on Scribd, so I think I'll be able to read this pretty quickly. So I'm also gonna plan to read The It Girl. That is a maybe on my TBR. It's a, if I get to it, I get to it. Because for me, I've really liked Ruth Ware's like mystery books, and I'm not sure how I'm gonna feel about this thriller version. It kind of was giving me Pretty Little Liar vibes. I don't know why. Well, I do know why. Anyway, so the It Girl follows this It Girl on campus. We're following her roommates. One day this It Girl, I'm forgetting her name, I don't know her name, I don't care to know her name, which tells you how excited I am to read the book, dies. And her roommate accuses this guy of killing her, but years and years later, this guy dies in prison, and reporters are saying, could he have been innocent? So she's determined to find out the truth of what really happened, and is interviewing and talking to all the people who were involved in their lives, who knew this girl that died, so she can figure out what exactly happened and who killed her. But every single person is persuading her not to investigate, which of course is only going to push her to investigate more. That is a maybe. I know that the audiobook is on Scribd, but she is a chunky book, so we will see if I get to that. If I do, great, and if I don't, oh well. And even though it's the month of October, I don't have that many spooky books on my TBR for this month, but I will be reading The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. Now, I do consider Ruth Ware one of my favorite authors. I have read many of her books. I've read One by One, and I read The Woman in Cabin 10. This is the 3rd book of Ruth Ware that I'm going to be reading. I gave One by One 4 stars, and I gave The Woman in Cabin 10 5 stars. So I am just eager to see my thoughts on this, and if it will solidify Ruth Ware as one of my favorite authors. This book is a favorite of quite a few people, I know, so I am ready to give that a go. It follows this woman who used to be a nanny for these 2 kids, and she's now in jail because the 2 kids that were in her care died. So she's writing to a lawyer and I think trying to prove her innocence, and we follow that story of what actually happened. Moving on to the two mangas. Hello, those are both backwards. The two mangas that I want to read this fall in the month of October. One is Spy Family. Spy Family follows the story of this spy who has to go on an undercover mission to get close to this like gang leader, I think. He has a child in the school, and the only way to get close is for this guy to have a child in that same school and to have the little girl befriend him. So he adopts a daughter, but what he does not know is that his daughter is telepathic and she can read his mind and knows entirely what's up and about his mission. And he also has a fake wife. They're both in the marriage for they're both undercover missions, because the wife is an assassin and she's also marrying him for the sake of her mission. So I've heard that it's very funny and heartwarming, and I'm already a little bit of the ways into this. My plan is actually to read this today, the same day that I am filming it. The other manga that I want to read is Bloom Into You. This has been on my TBR for about a year or so. I think I bought it last year in Barnes & Noble. It is a female-female romance following these two girls who have moved to a boarding school. They are roommates and they eventually fall in love. So it should be a really cozy, just heartwarming book, which I think is perfect for the fall season for me. And again, I'm planning to read that today, actually. Moving on from there, I want to tell you about some of the romance books that I'm reading. Drum roll, please. Are you all ready? Because I'm finally going to read Delilah Green Doesn't Care. Now, Delilah Green Doesn't Care is also a sapphic romance, female-female, following Miss Delilah Green right here. She is in her hometown for her stepsister's wedding. These two really did not get along, and her stepsister was making her life hell. Delilah has some resentment. This is her stepsister's friend. They meet up and they fall in love, from what I understand. I have been looking forward to this for so long, and if I did 5-star predictions, this would be a 5-star prediction, and I think I am the most excited to read this book. You can see right here what throws me into the shadows that this was blurred by Talia Hibbert, who is definitely a favorite author. The other romance book that I'm going to be reading is The Roughest Draft. Now, I tried to read Book Lovers earlier in the year during the summer, right when it came out, I think on like May or June or something. It was not for me, besties. It was not for me. I DNF'd it at 50%. But I know that Chandler from Chandler Ainsley did a if you didn't like this book, here's a book that did it better kind of video, which I'll link somewhere in this video. And in that video, she recommended that if you didn't like Book Lovers, you might like The Roughest Draft, because it is a bookish book, kind of rom-com. So it is about two characters who used to co-write books together, but they stopped working together. They were a super successful author duo, but have not found as much success individually. I don't recall the circumstances in which they were thrown back together, but they are thrown back together. I think it's a second chance romance, which is usually not my favorite trope, but throw it in the context of bookish storyline, then it may very well work for me. Final book that I will be reading in the romance category is perhaps my most anticipated romance book ever, because it is A Soul to Heal. So A Soul to Keep is a book that I read last month in a reading vlog, this one right here, and I freaking loved it so much. Went down in history as one of my favorite like paranormal fantasy romances ever. Orpheus was just such a sweetheart. It was a 4-star and not a 5-star because parts of the ending made me uncomfortable, but I am still so eager and excited to read the sequel, which follows Orpheus's brother. There are going to be more books in the series, and I will be reading every single one of them. It comes out next week, and as soon as it is available, my hands will be on that book. So A Soul to Heal follows Orpheus' brother, as I mentioned, and I believe a plus-size female main character who has been thrown into the underworld where Orpheus and his brother, who does not have a name, no one has ever named him, live. and she's thrown in for a crime that she has committed. She feels she deserves to be there. When she's thrown in, she is badly injured, and Orpheus's brother finds her. And if he is anything like his brother and as sweet as his brother was to our female character, then I'm just excited for all of the cozy underworld paranormal romance vibes. So earlier in the year, I started reading like the Fire Blood series by Ruby Dixon, following a bunch of dragon shifters in a post-apocalyptic world and the human mates that they take that helps them free themselves from this horrendous like mental disease that traps them in their dragon form and just makes them incredibly aggressive. So that's what happened. I read like 5 of the books, the last one being Fire in Her Eyes or Fire in Her Blood or something like that, which I loved so much. One follows another male dragon, but this time he is a bad guy, like a really bad guy. Horrendous things that he has done on the home planet. He actually refuses to shift until he himself finds a human mate who hates him. And she's like, you're disgusting. So we are going to follow that storyline. It's the final book in this series, so I will be excited to wrap that series up. Finally, we move on to my biggest stack of books, which is this one right here. These are a lot of my Fairy Loot books because I am doing a reading vlog. So let's just go through, because the thing that they all have in common is being fantasy. I'm going to start with The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Now, this is not a book that I ever planned to read, mostly because Miss Addie is immortal and keeps her ass in Europe. Okay, babes. Okay. But anyway, I did read Gallant by B. Schwab, and I absolutely loved their writing so much. And I'm figuring, because I love the writing so much, and I do love me a morally great hero, I believe the devil himself is in this book. I know he's not the love interest, but like if he was the love interest, that would be right up my street. It's something that I have been anticipating for over a year. I literally bought this book last year. It has been sitting on my shelf forever, so I am ready to finally read this and see my perspective and my thoughts. Moving on to the Fairy Loot books, the fantasies. I will keep this short. One of the first ones I'm going to be reading is This Vicious Grace. This follows our main character, who is poisonous. Anyone she touches, she dies. She has killed all of her suitors simply by touching them, and finally someone is trying to kill her because they're like, yo, you gotta go. So she hires a bodyguard and she falls in love with her bodyguard. So that's the extent of what I know. This is part of a Fairy Loot is it actually worth it video that I'm doing, so that's why I'm reading this book, but also because she cost me a lot of money, so I might as well read her. She's not just here to be pretty. We'll also be reading Once Upon a Broken Heart. Now, I know a lot of bookstagrammers have really loved this book. It has been making its rounds in popularity. It follows this woman who was in a relationship with this man. He gets engaged to someone else, and she is determined to stop their wedding. Her heart is absolutely broken, so she makes a deal with a kind of like trickster, king, god, deity type of thing, and they fall in love is I believe what happens. We follow the story, I guess, her trying to stop this wedding. In the theme of Shar really loves a dark-haired villain character. Belladonna is my newest Fairy Loot book, and as soon as I got this book, I knew I wanted to read it right away because Belladonna follows a character who is in love with Death himself. I am just so excited. That's all I know. She's in love with Death, and I would argue that is all I need to know. I've seen a couple of other people reading this month. The vibes it gives me is like spooky season. So I'm hoping that it will live up to that spooky season feeling and be as beautiful of a story as it is a book. And are you ready, y'all? Perhaps the most anticipated book ever. It is my Fairy Loot edition of Babel by R.F. Kuang. Now, she's a chunky book, like beautiful, gorgeous. Do I know what this book is about? No. I've never read an R.F. Kuang though, but I've only ever heard super high praises. It's gonna give me all of the dark academia vibes. I believe it tackles issues of imperialism and it's about translation. It's going to be a pretty challenging book in terms that it's outside of my comfort zone and like just for reference, there's a grip of my hand. It is super big, but I am ready to read this and give my first R.F. Kuang book love and attention that it deserves. And this again will be part of my Fairy Loot reading vlog. And that's it. Those are all of the books that I plan to read in the month of October. Very, very chunky books. I will for sure be reading things outside of my TBR. I don't think I will get to every single book on this list, but my goal is to read at least half of the books on this list, and there's so many that I am anticipating so much. Spy Family, Delilah Green Doesn't Care, A Soul to Heal, so many books I'm excited about. Belladonna, those are the ones I'm most excited about, and of course Gallows Hill, and then everything else will also just be fun experiments and fun reading for me, because sometimes it's enjoyable to read outside of your comfort zone. So with that said, as always, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you being here. If you like bookish content, if you like this video and you want to stick around, I would appreciate if you go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!